Hey everyone, just a few quick things before we get started. Don't forget to sign the attendance sheet. It's just real simple. Just ask you 2 questions. Kind of looks like this. But that's pretty much it. Please enjoy. Hope you all learn something. Okay, so in today's video, we're going to be going over while loops, do while loops, and increments and decrements. Office hours are up here at the top, so if you have any questions, feel free to stop by those or just shoot me an email. Okay, so the first question is, what does incrementing and decrementing a variable do? And so the answer to this one is incrementing increases a variable by 1, right? Or it adds 1. And decrementing will do the opposite, right? It decreases a variable by 1, subtracts 1. Okay? And so how do you increment or decrement a variable? So let's say we had a variable x. Now, there's 2 ways you can increment or decrement a variable. The first way, the first way is going to be x plus plus, right? And this is what we call postfix. The second way is going to be plus plus x, and this is going to be called prefix. And so these also are the same with decrementing. So you could do x minus minus and minus minus x. And so these will add 1, these will subtract 1. And so then you may be wondering what's the difference between postfix and prefix. And so that's my next question. So postfix will use the variable first and then add 1. Oh, and then add, let's just put and then add. And prefix will add, then use the variable. Well, let's put add slash subtract, right? Because you can subtract. Let's put sub. That's good. Okay, and so what this means is if you have a cout, let's say you have a cout statement, cout x plus plus, and let's say x is equal to 5, this will cout 5, while if you had it the opposite way, it would print out 6, because this one it uses it, then adds it, and then this one adds it and then uses it. Where okay, and so the next question I have is, how do you write a while loop? So we can do while, open parentheses, and your expression that you want to test, just like an if statement, open brackets and open brackets. And so this works, right? Because while this expression is true, everything within these brackets is going to be run. So once it gets to the end of the brackets, it's just going to go back up, test the expression again, and then keep going down. Okay, the next question I have is, what kind of loop is a while loop? So a while loop is what we call a pretest loop. And so you see how it tests the expression before running the code? That means it's a pretest loop. If this expression is always false, then it'll never run. Okay? Next question I have is, what is an infinite loop? So an infinite loop is a loop that runs for forever. And so an example of this is while one, and then some more code. And so one, that's always going to be true, right? Because one stands for true. So this is just going to run for forever. And these are really bad, and you want to try to avoid these as much as you can. Actually, you want to avoid these. So always make sure that your expression can be broken. Okay, so the next question I have is, what is a counter? So a counter is a variable that you use to keep track of how many times a loop has run, right? So if we had a while loop and it said while x is less than 5, and right, so let's say we had a while loop. And let's say we start x off as 0. Then if you had something in here that we had another counter, like and then we had counter plus plus, right? We were incrementing and decrementing. The counter is equal to 0, and then so every time this runs, while will be this counter will be updated, and so it'll run, like depending on what you do to x, like if you were just adding 1, it would run 5 times. But that's essentially how you'd use it. Okay, the next question I have is, how does a do while loop work? So a do while loop will run the code first and then check the expression. And so how do we write one? So it's going to be do brackets brackets with the code, and then at the end of the bottom bracket you want the while with the expression and then a semicolon. So this is an example of one of those times I was telling you about. A semicolon comes after this while expression, but this is only true in do whiles. But you can see there's no expression up top. Is because you run the code first and then you check it down here. So like once it gets through this code, it then checks the expression. If the expression is true, it will go back and run the code again, then check the expression again. And if it's false, it just continues on with the rest of the code. And so the next question I have is, what kind of loop is a do while loop? And so if a pretest loop is a loop that tests the expression first and then runs the code after that, and a do while runs the code first then checks the expression, then you can kind of assume that a do while loop is going to be a post-test loop. Okay, so next I have some code. I'm going to get online GDB up and then we can work some out. Okay, so I have a online GDB here all set up with IOStream and namespace and main and stuff. And so let's get started. So the code says, write a program that asks the user for a positive integer between 3 and 13 to use for the length of a rectangle. It says the width of the rectangle will be 5. The program should display a rectangle of the given size using x. And so what this means is that we're looking for here is we're looking for a rectangle of width 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and of, let's say they enter in 3, and so of length 3, so we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll just do it 3 times. Okay, and so this is what I'm looking for, a rectangle of x's. And so let's just start with taking in the variable from the user. So, we're going to need a variable called length. We'll just do L to make it short. Okay, and then we're going to see out, please enter a integer between 3 and 13, inclusive. Okay, and so now that we have that, let's input the variable. So cin, arrow is pointing towards the variable L, and now we can start the rectangle. And so let's think about this. Well, a big hint is that I'm doing this in the while and do while video. So obviously, and this right here. So we're going to be using a while loop, or a do while loop, right? We'll start with a while. So we'll do while, and then, now we're going to need to test an expression. And so we know how big the width is, but we don't know how big the length is that they give us. So we need to test L. So while something is less than L, right? Let's just go put brackets here so we don't forget. And so this is when we're going to need a counter variable. So I'm going to introduce another one up here. We're going to call it count, and count, and we're going to set that equal to 0. Okay? And so we can do while count is less than L. This actually looks like a 1. I'm just going to change it to length. Alright, sorry about that. So now while count is less than length, do whatever we say. And so we know that the width is 5. So we can just do cout a whole row at once, right? Which a whole row is just going to be 5 x's. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we can do an inline. Right? And so let's think about this. So it's going to print out one row, and it's going to run until count is equal to length. So count starts at 0 and it ends up length numbers, it will run length, ends up at the number of lengths, it'll run length times. But we still need to update counter, right? If we don't update anything right now, 0 will always be less than the length, which is between 3 and 13. So it'll be an infinite loop. So down here we can put counter, or count, plus plus, semicolon. Now you could also use plus plus count. In this case it doesn't matter since it's on the same, since nothing else is on that line. And let's give this a test. Alright, so let's enter 3 and let's see if we get what we get. Yeah, look, that's exactly what we wrote over here, right? Now let's do some bigger numbers. Let's enter in, say, 8. Nice, nice. It's looking right. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8. Yep, that's right. And let's go all the way to 13. See how big it gets. Dang, that's a pretty big rectangle. All right. Well, so I took care of this while. So how would we change this to a do while? Well, this while statement needs to go at the end, right? And on top of that, it needs to have a semicolon. And we need to have do up here. Okay, so we have the formatting down, and so let's think about if we need to change anything else. So it's going to run once, where count's equal to 0, and we'll do, so it runs this, and then updates count. So count was 0, now count's 1, while 1 is less than length, which was, let's say it's 3, and it's true, and then it runs it one more time, and then counts down to be 2, and then while count's less than length, 2 is less than 3, and then it runs it one more time, and then counts 3 and becomes length. So it should work again. Let's test it. Yep, it still works right. But but yep. Alright, so it's still looking good. But if you stay till the end of this video, if you keep watching, you will see kind of a good example of a while versus a do while loop. But that's it for this video right here. Thank you all for making it all the way through this video. Here's a little way of saying thank you.